The power of the dark side.
Hello there. Hello everyone, what's up, it's Luke here. Welcome to my May the 4th special for this year. Since I'm trying to do scripted videos more often, yeah, this wasn't exactly the easiest thing to make. I don't know how this video is going to resonate with people. In fact, I don't know if it's going to resonate with anyone at all. But if for whatever reason someone decides to give this a watch, fingers crossed you guys and girls will enjoy it. So, here we go. This is my video on the birth, rise, fall, and current state of Star Wars. Let's begin. On May 14th, 1944, a legendary filmmaker was born. The filmmaker that I'm referring to being the one and only George Lucas. Upon becoming an adult and entering the filmmaking scene, Lucas's first feature film was 1973's American Graffiti. To simply put it, I haven't seen it. However, from the research I've done, it seems to have been relatively well received. However, American Graffiti only lit a spark of success for George Lucas's career. It was his next movie that, shall we say, ignited the fire for his career. With his next movie, Lucas drew inspiration from the sci-fi serials he had grown up with, examples of which being Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. I know the following statement doesn't even scratch the surface in terms of the production struggles, but through a lot of blood, sweat and tears, he brought that dream to life. On May 25th of 1977, a certain sci-fi blockbuster of his was not only a great success, but it changed the face of science fiction cinema forever. Yes, Star Wars. The story of a farm boy, a royal princess, a narrow-minded smuggler, a Wookiee, 2 droids, and an elderly Jedi Master joining with the struggling Rebel Alliance to deliver a crippling blow to the tyrannical Galactic Empire by destroying the Death Star. That was what changed sci-fi cinema. I'm not complaining about that for 1 second, I'm just bringing up the fact that this story, even with its rather odd elements to it, well, it's a classic. I mean, the engaging story, varied characters, the marvellous visual effects, intense action, and is it or is it not one of the most quotable movies in cinema history? Plus the John Williams score, of course. But I'll just roll this little quotes montage for you so you can see what I mean.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take it away!
It's your father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Too little short for a stormtrooper.
When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
May the Force be with you.
Use the Force, Luke.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
However, the success of Star Wars didn't just begin with this movie, now known as Episode 4, A New Hope today. Oh no. In 1980, everyone's favourite sci-fi galaxy from far, far away returned to the big screen with a vengeance, with The Empire Strikes Back, now known as Episode 5 today. This movie, as hinted at by the title, focuses on the Empire gaining the upper hand over the rebels at every turn. The Battle of Hoth, Han, Leia, Chewie and C-3PO being held captive by Vader, and Vader maiming Luke all in one movie. Not to mention Luke being held by the Wampa on Hoth, him failing every test with Yoda, and rushing to save his friends before his tutelage under Yoda was complete. Oh, and Han being frozen in carbonite too. Like its predecessor, this movie was a great success. Also, again, the quotes.
Afraid I was gonna leave without giving you a goodbye kiss?
I just assumed he's a Wookiee.
I can arrange that.
Use a good kiss.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder.
We would be honored if you would join us.
I love you.
I know.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet. All too easy.
Plus, to top it off, the biggest reveal in cinematic history.
No, I am your father.
Fun fact, that final quote is often butchered by fans. This is how fans usually say it.
Luke, I am your father.
However, this is what the actual quote is.
No, I am your father.
Just thought I'd point that out. After The Empire Strikes Back was released, fans got the first glimpse of the next entry in Star Wars' cinematic journey 2 years later. In 1982, the first trailer for Revenge of the Jedi, yes, I said Revenge of the Jedi, was released. However, the title was later changed to Return of the Jedi. In 1983, the final product was released. Now known as Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, this was the conclusion of the original trilogy. In this entry, Luke has gone from a simple farm boy to a true Jedi Knight. Han is freed, the Empire is back in full force with a new Death Star, Luke and Leia are revealed to be siblings, and the Emperor enters the fray to bring Luke to the dark side. This ultimately results in a climactic clash between father and son, while the rebels assault the second Death Star and the remainder of the 501st Legion is defeated by Ewoks on the planet moon of Endor. While this movie was still a great success, there was considerable negativity leveled against it due to both the Ewoks and the reuse of the Death Star. Again, though, this didn't stop the movie from being successful, and it was a great conclusion to the trilogy. It was at this time that Star Wars movies were on their first hiatus. Even though the movies ended, there was still desire from the fan base for more Star Wars stories. So, what other Star Wars media worthy of note was released during that time, I hear you ask? Well, this is something which I left out of the first section so I could focus purely on the original movies. Just a brief preface, I won't be covering all, not even half, or even a quarter of the EU in this video. Why? Because if I did, we'd be here all day. Though there are some key entities of it that I wish to mention. After A New Hope was released, fans were given the first non-cinematic Star Wars tale in the form of the novel Splinter of the Mind's Eye. This story featured Luke and Leia on the planet Mimban as they searched for a type of crystal known as the Kyber crystal. This also featured the first battle between Luke and Vader in canon at that time. Just a fun fact for those who perhaps didn't know that. Splinter of the Mind's Eye was also a multimedia project of sorts. It has both a comic and an audio drama adaptation to its name. But we're going to jump forward in time to the years 1991 to 1993. In this 3-year gap, fans were gifted with another key non-cinematic Star Wars story by the legendary Timothy Zahn. It was a trilogy of novels called Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command, aka the Thrawn Trilogy. This was also another multimedia project with respective comic and audio drama incarnations. The Thrawn Trilogy takes place 9 years after Return of the Jedi. It focuses on Luke, Leia, Han, and a new character, Mara Jade, trying to stop a clone called Jarrus Sabayoth, who was created by the cloning operation spearheaded by the Chiss Grand Admiral Thrawn. For those who don't know, Thrawn isn't your lapdog or unhinged ruler of Star Wars' scum and villainy. Thrawn is a member of the Chiss species who relied on studying art and had Gamorrean guards to do the physical work for him. He was also one of few aliens in the Empire's forces. The Empire despised aliens, however Thrawn's intellect and cunning allowed him to rise through the ranks and become, well, a Grand Admiral. 2 years later, in 1995, the first entry of a 5-game series was released, called Dark Forces. The story of that game took place shortly before A New Hope. You played as Kyle Katarn, and the rebels made it his mission to steal the Death Star plans and destroy the Empire's Dark Trooper project. In 1996, another classic Star Wars novel was released, known as Shadows of the Empire. It was also a multimedia project, with audio drama, a game, and a comic incarnations respectively. Shadows of the Empire focused on a guy named Dash Rendar. It served as a bridge between episodes 5 and 6, as Dash Rendar and the trademark Rebels crew attempted to stop Prince Shizor. I'd say it was around this point that this non-cinematic Star Wars media became collectively known as the Expanded Universe. In 1997, the original trilogy was re-released in honor of A New Hope's 20th anniversary. There's not much to say about this other than the fact that a lot of the changes are more detrimental to the movies than they were beneficial. It's these cuts of the movies that have been re-released and changed even more later down the line. Lucas attempted to justify the changes by saying that those versions of the OT were his true visions for the movies. I'll just roll a montage of some of the changes.
Agreed.
Look, Jabba, next time you want to talk to me, come see me yourself.
Since these re-releases came out, fans have been wanting the original theatrical cuts of the OT available to buy on today's technology, but that still hasn't happened as of yet. As previously mentioned in the first section of this video, the Star Wars movies took their first hiatus in 1994, and it ended in 1998. This is because in 1999 Star Wars returned to the big screen with the first installment of the eagerly awaited prequel trilogy, The Phantom Menace. When May of 1999 rolled around and the movie was released, many fans hated the following things: the acting, the overuse of CGI, the poor story, the heavy focus on politics, the character of Jar Jar Binks, and some fans really hated the pod race scene as well because they thought it was a bit too long. Yeah, TPM didn't leave the best impressions for casual Star Wars fans, and the critical reception of Phantom Menace in their eyes didn't get Lucas to sharpen his game very much when it came to the making of the next two movies. All three prequels suffer a lot of the same issues in the eyes of the infuriated fans. Attack of the Clones had the love story between Anakin and Padme, which again casual fans couldn't stand, and it was responsible for giving us lines like,
"I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere."
Then we come to Revenge of the Sith, which, whilst it was an improvement over its predecessors in the eyes of the really annoyed portion of the fan base, there were still problems fans had with it, and there was the moment at the end. So, whilst the prequels were hounded down by fans, there are definitely their positives that they have, and I love the prequels, and I will defend them no matter what original trilogy fanboys say. Again, not the original trilogy fans, the original trilogy fanboys. Alright? Just saying. But I think one of the biggest positives of the prequel trilogy is that it gave birth to one of the biggest events in Star Wars' history, and a massive chunk of the EU became dedicated to it.
Begun. The Clone War has.
The Clone Wars Multimedia project was a media bonanza from 2002 to 2008 that helped bridge the gap between episodes 2 and 3. This cornerstone of Star Wars media was comprised of novels like Yoda Dark Rendezvous, Jedi Trial, and Labyrinth of Evil, games like Star Wars The Clone Wars and the original Battlefront duology, comics like the Republic comics, and a 9-volume series by Dark Horse, and the original Clone Wars microseries in the TV show department. The previously mentioned media and much more from that 6-year period helped bridge that gap. Unfortunately, for Clone Wars Multimedia Project fans, all of this would be overwritten by what I'm going to discuss literally right now, so don't go anywhere. In 2008, the Clone Wars era would receive an alternate version of its events, with Star Wars The Clone Wars, often referred to as TCW by Clone Wars Multimedia Project fans to avoid confusion. I will do the same here for the same reason. It began with a feature film. Fun fact, the TCW feature film was actually the first 3 or 4 episodes of the subsequent show's first season compiled into a movie. It wasn't the best received Star Wars movie, however it did do fairly well at the box office. Just to quickly mention, the subsequent series wasn't that popular to begin with, but it improved season by season and now it has quite a big fan base to it, and it's probably now one of the most loved entities of Star Wars material, though Legends fans who subscribe to the Clone Wars Multimedia Project despise the show due to the continuity errors that it's responsible for. Moving on from that though, TCW wasn't the only Star Wars media that was to be released in 2008. A fan-favourite video game was also released a month after the TCW movie. You can probably guess what I'm talking about. Yes, The Force Unleashed. This game took place in the Dark Times era, and introduced fan-favourite character Galen Marek, aka Starkiller, Vader's secret apprentice. Over the course of the game, Galen was manipulated with lies of being destined to destroy the Emperor. After being betrayed and almost killed by Vader, he is rebuilt, and his mission transitions from hunting down Jedi to creating the Rebel Alliance. However, he found out that he was just a tool to eventually be disposed of by Vader and Sidious. This resulted in Galen turning against Vader, defeating him in combat and attacking the Emperor. Galen then sacrificed himself for the rebel leaders, giving up his life in the process. The Force Unleashed was yet another multimedia project to Star Wars' name, with respective comic and novel adaptations. The game became a bestseller and even won an award for its story. In 2010, 2 years after the release of The Force Unleashed, a sequel was released, which also has a novel adaptation. I don't know if there's a comic book adaptation for The Force Unleashed 2, so you guys may have to let me know on that. But the story of The Force Unleashed 2 focused on a clone of Starkiller. He is manipulated with memory flashes of his past, of his template, the original Galen Marek. Galen's former lover, Juno Eclipse, becomes the clone's obsession due to these memory flashes, and he turns against Vader as a result. A lot of fans were left disappointed by The Force Unleashed 2. Many criticized its duration due to it being very short. Fans also found the story underwhelming, and the biggest question of the story, that is the Starkiller you're playing as a clone or not, was left unanswered. Again, fans were left disappointed, and a third game was on the cards, but I will get to that in a moment. In late 2012, George Lucas passed the torch of Star Wars to Disney in exchange for $4.05 billion. Along with Disney's purchase of the IP came the promise of more movies. Whilst this seemed promising on the surface, they decided to make some rather ignorant decisions along the way, if you ask me, and we'll get to those right now. In 2013, 5 years after it began, Star Wars The Clone Wars was unexpectedly cancelled. This left a lot of fans of the show royally furious. Just in case you thought this was the only saber to the chest that Star Wars fans suffered that year, unfortunately you'd be wrong. Later that year, shortly after the 5th season of TCW ended and the show was subsequently thrown in the trash, LucasArts was shut down by Disney. This meant all in-development projects like Battlefront 3, the assets of which were later salvaged for Battlefront Elite Squadron, The Force Unleashed 3, First Assault, and 1313 were all thrown in the trash. Disney then gave a 10-year exclusivity deal of publishing rights for Star Wars games to EA that same year. I'll be touching on that later. So, a popular TV show cancelled, and several games in the making left by the wayside. How could Disney mistreat the Star Wars license any worse, some of you may be wondering? Well, in 2014, Disney gave Star Wars fans another saber to the chest by choosing to decanonize the entire expanded universe. Yeah, the past 37 years worth of games, comics, novels, and television shows all just thrown out so that Disney could create their own canon. Disney tried to justify this by saying that they wanted to give the new generation of Star Wars content creators quote-unquote creative freedom, though they haven't really been doing that, have they? Also, a lot of EU material was still in a publication cycle at the time Disney decided to throw it out, so therefore they rebranded the past 37 years of now decanonized Star Wars lore as Legends. This decision infuriated a lot of Expanded Universe fans, and due to Disney throwing out the EU, people who were dedicated to Legends have now begun the online movement Give Us Legends, and have spent the past 4 years trying to get Legends media into places like libraries and children's hospitals, and are still doing it to this day. Why are they doing that? Because Disney will hopefully realise the money-making potential of continuing Legends. I mean, they even went as far as to raise money and put up a billboard right outside Lucasfilm's headquarters. That just shows you how dedicated they are. Fingers crossed the Legends fans will get their canon back one day. I certainly hope so anyway. In November of 2015, DICE, the dev team behind the Battlefield series, and EA released Star Wars Battlefront for current-gen consoles and PC, not to be confused with the original Star Wars Battlefront game from 2004. Whilst the graphics were astounding, it disappointed many fans, including yours truly, due to factors like the following things: no single-player campaign, no space battles, no prequel-era content, a limited planet roster, no class system, and only 20 vs 20 multiplayer. Plus, it didn't have any of the game modes that the original Battlefront games had, so stuff like Galactic Conquest, Instant Action, Capture the Flag, Hunt, all that shoved away. Now, I know the game did have post-release support, but I'm talking about what that game had on release, not what it has in its current state. Just mentioning that for clarification's sake. Somehow, even with the mixed critical reception of the game, Battlefront 2015 still sold an, in my opinion, undeservedly immense 14 million copies. Don't know how, but I'm just going to move on before my blood begins to boil from talking about that game. In December of the same year, the eagerly anticipated Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens was released. And this is where the split started to occur. Whilst a lot of fans were pleased that Star Wars movies were now in theatres again, there were a lot of other fans who didn't like it due to the similarities it shared with A New Hope, and even going so far as to copy ideas from the Expanded Universe. And by the Expanded Universe, I am talking about the very same Expanded Universe that Disney completely decanonized the year before. And I find it funny that they did those things because prior to release, Disney were claiming that The Force Awakens' story would be 100% original. Yeah, what a lie that was. By the way, I do enjoy The Force Awakens, it's just you can't really overlook the similarities, especially when they are that in your face. In 2016, we were given the first anthology Star Wars movie, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. It was originally pitched to be an all-out war movie, however the final product we received was just a heist movie, focusing on a ragtag group of rebels stealing the Death Star plans, and the scene at the end with Vader slaughtering those rebel troopers being the most praised scene of the entire movie. I don't know about you guys, but I've only watched Rogue One once, and found it quite a slog to sit through. I was given my DVD copy in April, and I didn't finish my first and only viewing of the movie until 6 months afterwards. Did anyone else have that experience with Rogue One, or was it just me? Anyway, I shall move on. 2 years later, in November, DICE and EA released the second entry of their current-gen Star Wars Battlefront series, the oh-so distinctively titled Star Wars Battlefront 2. Again, not to be confused with the significantly superior original Star Wars Battlefront 2 from 2005. The game was touted by DICE and EA as being brilliant, as it featured all of the content that the 2015 Battlefront didn't have, those being a single-player campaign, content from all eras, space battles, a class system, and they even decided to make the DLC completely free. It seemed as if EA and DICE heard our prayers, but then they went and screwed over that renewed sense of optimism from fans by including predatory, scummy microtransactions. News of this atrocity was so widespread around the internet that even government officials heard about it.
This game is a Star Wars-themed online casino designed to lure kids into spending money.
Because of that, studies are now being conducted regarding whether or not loot boxes count as a form of gambling in games. Also, post-launch content for the game took much longer than it should have to actually get the ball rolling. Just so you guys know, it took a full year for Battlefront 2 2017 to be given the content that it has now. Just saying. However, Battlefront 2 wasn't the only source of hatred that Star Wars fans received that year, because the following month, the next installment of the Skywalker saga was released, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. To put it simply, this was the most creatively divisive Star Wars movie to date. Whilst critics were loving the movie, fans understandably hounded this movie to shreds, be it because of how drawn out the pace of the movie is, the poorly integrated humour, Leia's forced flight moment, the abrupt and idiotic death of Snoke, the ignorance and soft antagonism of Vice Admiral Amelin Holdo, Rey besting Luke in a fight, and the characterization of Luke Skywalker himself. Oh, Luke, what did they do to you? Oh yeah, that's right. You know, that clip is pretty fitting if I do say so myself. Guys, I'm not sure if any of you know this, but Mark Hamill did actually disagree with every major decision that Rian Johnson made for Luke. And the final product shows us why. However, I'll put in this clip here just to prove that point in case you don't trust my statement at face value.
Can I just say, though, a lot of times I would say to Ryan, we got to think about the fans. And he said, no, we got to think about the story and we got to think about our movie, which
Just so you guys know, I personally judge movies based on entertainment value. Therefore, I will admit I did enjoy the movie, but those aforementioned issues and other things are problems that I have with the movie, and plenty of other people have issues with it too. In May of last year, we were given the second anthology movie, Solo, A Star Wars Story. This movie wasn't that well received. Bear in mind, 6 months prior, The Last Jedi became the straw that broke the camel's back for many fans. That, combined with the fact that no one was really interested in this movie, led to both poor critical reception and it bombed at the box office, big time. So, by this point, the standalone movies are now on an indefinite hold, and Disney are in desperate need of a contingency last resort to get the fanbase back on their side. So how did they do that? Well...
We can see them! We can see them! We can hit them!
They brought back TCW. Just a quick fun fact, Season 7 of TCW, aka TCW Legacy, only made it as far as animatics before the show was originally cancelled. However, since Disney have been hounded at relentlessly by the fanbase, they decided to give Lucasfilm Animation the go-ahead and finish the animation for these final sets of episodes. Also, a new trailer for the final season of TCW just came out not too long ago. Just give it a YouTube search and you'll find it. Anyway, needless to say, many fans, including myself, were thrilled upon having found this out. The only downside to TCW's return being, in my opinion, that it's exclusive to Disney's streaming service that's coming out later this year. I really hope they give us a DVD and Blu-ray release of that. I really do. But I'm definitely excited to see those episodes of TCW and have the show properly conclude itself, as opposed to just being cut off dead in its tracks. But it's now time for me to talk a little bit about the current state. Well, here we are in 2019. Along with the return of TCW, there were two things that were revealed at Star Wars Celebration this year. The first being the teaser trailer for Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. To be honest, I haven't much to say about this really. The second thing was the reveal trailer for a new Star Wars game, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The game is set in the Dark Times period and will focus on a character called Cal Kestis, a Jedi Padawan who is surviving whilst on the run due to Order 66. Funnily enough, this game was announced at last year's E3 in the most bland way I've ever seen. In fact, I'll show it to you now.
So the Star Wars name is Jedi Fallen Order.
Woo! So Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah, so it kind of gives you some idea that you'll be playing a Jedi.
Guys, this may seem off topic, but hear me out for a second. There's a YouTuber called Joker Fett, and he posted a video in 2014 called The Sorry State of Star Wars, and in that video, he expressed his opinion that I feel has now become more relevant than ever in terms of Star Wars. That being, and I quote, "With Star Wars right now, we are in a dead zone." And I fully agree with this statement, because the paying customers have finally had enough. They're not willing to continue supporting these movies. They're not interested in buying up merchandise. Heck, I'm not merchandise, and I'll leave links of various videos in the description from the same YouTube channel that show years old Star Wars merch being just left to languish in toy sections of various stores. Games have been practically non-existent in terms of EA handling the license, and they're now 6 years into the license, and we've had 2 meh Battlefront games, a ton of mobile games, so, you know. Oh, and also as well, guys, in the television department, we've got a live-action Star Wars show called The Mandalorian coming out, and that will be sometime in the late months of this year, I think. But if TCW Season 7, Episode 9, The Mandalorian, and Jedi Fallen Order, if they all end up failing, then that could be the death of Star Wars as we know it. Now, I'm not saying for one second that the expanded universe stuff, be it Legends or Disney canon for those who are loyal supporters of either brand, I'm not saying that they're insignificant to any degree. In fact, it was Legends that kept Star Wars going in terms of a material perspective for the times that we didn't have the movies. That and merchandise. So don't worry, I'm not trying to say that either the EU or Disney canon isn't keeping Star Wars revenue coming in that sense, but the core media types for Star Wars are the movies, the television shows, and the games, whether you want to admit that or not. Meaning that if, again, these things fail, the core of Star Wars will be dead, and the supplementary media in the form of comics, novels, source books, all of that could be gone if the core flops. And yes, I will put my hands up and say this. Star Wars is not the golden goose it used to be. It's had its grave dug deeper and deeper over the past few years. And honestly, the aforementioned media that's coming out this year, those are kind of its last legs, if I'm being completely honest. At least that's the way I see it. I really hope that, you know, Episode 9, The Mandalorian, TCW Season 7 and Jedi Fallen Order revitalize Star Wars in some notable way, but I'm really worried that isn't going to be the case, because, of course, with TCW Season 7, yes, people are up in arms about it, but you know, that took several years for them to finally give that show the ending that it probably should have had. Jedi Fallen Order, again, people are up in arms about that, but this is still EA, bear in mind, so they could find some way to screw it up. Episode 9 is the immediate follow-up of a movie that broke the camel's back, and for a lot of fans. And then we have The Mandalorian, which, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really care about The Mandalorian personally. And I wish I could say I did, but I honestly don't. I really don't want Star Wars to be dug... I really don't want Star Wars to be dug into the ground and have a gravestone placed on it because of what we've got coming out this year being a flop. I really hope that things do go well, but those are skin of the teeth, probably even wishful thinking hopes at this point. Anyway, guys, that's it from me. I know you guys probably found this probably quite boring, and I know that there's a lot of material that I didn't discuss, a lot of games and a lot of comics and books that I didn't discuss in regards to the expanded universe stuff. But again, we would have been here all day had I done that. So I hope you guys found this video enjoyable in some way. And yeah, that's my May the 4th special for this year. Fingers crossed some of you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next video. So until then, goodbye. You've been warned. And may the 4th be with you.
Remember, the Force will be with you always.